Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best that you can be. Today, I'm honoured to be joined by Riya Jain. Riya is the founder of The Land of Can and a student at Duke University. The Land of Can has sold over 30,000 books across the United States, and it's an initiative that has formed educational partnerships with more than 500 schools and systems, including Chicago Public Schools and the School District of Philadelphia. Whether you're a first-time listener or a returning listener to Personable, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to grow the audience to over 1,000 subscribers, so please help us on the journey. Riya, I'm hugely excited to interview today. I wanted to get started by asking you if you could describe what is the Land of Can and why did you start/join it?
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. So the Land of Can is creates world-class children's books and other resources dedicated to empowering kids to believe that more is possible when you define yourself by your strengths rather than your deficits. So we've over a dozen children's books. I actually have some of them here with me to show you for
Ah,
example. We've over a dozen children's books. We can get more into that later though, on different health topics. And it actually started as like a personal sort of passion project, as I feel like most entrepreneurial ventures are best when it's something that you can relate to and comes from like the why. The why is always the most important thing in entrepreneurship. And I have food allergies. And so I grew up my whole life allergic to peanuts and tree nuts and sort of defined myself by that and was defined by it by my peers in elementary school and middle school, sitting at the nut-free table at lunch. It sort of became my identity. And I didn't realize that that was sort of a problem actually until sitting at that nut-free table with not just people with, food allergies, people with, other health conditions like, diabetes, celiac, asthma, and, other chronic conditions, people in wheelchairs, that we were all doing the same thing. We were all defining ourselves by this thing that we couldn't do or control. And so I sort of set out on a mission to change that narrative. And as a seventh grader, I published The Class That Canned Food Allergies. So that's this one right here. And it's a exciting children's book where it not only teaches other kids what food allergies are, their peers, so they feel more understood and don't get bullied as much by their allergy, but also empowers those with it to believe that that's not what defines them. And so that's sort of how it started, and it sort of just took off from there. As this issue not only applies to people with health conditions, but everyone defines themselves by things they can't do. So
but beyond that initial point, like I'm sure there's a lot of things for both kids and adults alike which they struggle with. But where did that initial like bravery come from to say, so you realize, okay, I can do this and I don't want to be defined by my food allergies. But I feel like it's one thing to have that sort of battle internally and to overcome it, which is a brave and amazing thing within itself. But then to go and share that publicly and to write about it and to help other people is a whole different thing. So what made you want to go beyond the point of, I just want to help myself to actually go out and help other people, both within your community and beyond that?
yeah, that's a great question. I think that definitely originates from, as a seventh grader, having gone through this, social emotional learning campaigns in school, having the nurse come in and talk to our class like, oh, this is what food allergies are. This is an EpiPen. Be super scared of it. It's super scary and has a shot in it. And just sitting in that classroom, so embarrassed, not wanting anyone to know. I hated it. And I think when I sort of realized this issue, I didn't want to just fix it for myself, but give back to sort of the younger generation, thinking of them and how I sort of saw a solution and ran with it and knew that this is something I wish I had when I was in grade school and when I was just growing up, that I wanted to give that back sort of to my community, and then beyond my community to the world. So, everyone deserves this type of resource, which is why we just want to expand and scale it as far as possible.
Could you take me on the journey from coming up with the idea and realizing I want to write a book to developing that into your first book as a real project? Because it's not just a scrap piece of paper that you shared online. Like that is a very good looking, well read, well written book to actually then that point to transitioning it into the real business that it is today.
Yeah, so it's definitely a journey. It is very difficult starting any sort of company, but books especially, there's so much that goes into it. There's questions of, do you reach out to a publisher? Do you self-publish? Where's your illustrator coming from? There's this whole world of ebooks now. Do you go that route? Do people read books anymore nowadays? Like, there's so much that goes into it. I think that when I was first starting out publishing a food allergy book, I had actually met, so I've been a food allergy advocate my whole life, as my mom is a food allergy researcher. So I initially had that connection to the food allergy world. And at a food allergy conference I was speaking at, I met this guy. His name is JJ Velopez, who's now secretly he's my co-founder actually, but we don't know that in the story yet. But I met him.
Yeah.
He's older, and he had the same passion for creating a children's book on food allergies. As he's also has allergies to milk and nuts. So we initially started talking. We wrote the drafts of the book, and this is something that was never seen before, as most health books for kids are very boring, written by doctors. No kid has probably ever looked or read peer reviewed it before it's gone to publish. But yeah, and so we partnered then with food allergy organizations, top doctors in their fields, because you don't want to get your medical information from a seventh grader and a college student, which he was at the time. And so we collaborated. We found an illustrator who's great. It's the same illustrator we use now, same as Bill, and sort of took it from there, printed a ton. And who could say no to a seventh grader holding up a book, right? And so, yeah, and then actually what happened after that was COVID hit. So this is 2020, and we realized that this would be a great opportunity, unfortunately, obviously, but take advantage of these opportunities that arise, to create a book on coronavirus and COVID, to all the kids who don't understand what's happening right now. And so we wrote and published that book, which got a ton of media attention. We got on the news. I was doing all these interviews because I was, again, just a cute eighth grader with a little book, and they needed a feel-good story on the news. So taking advantage of those opportunities, and then we realized that there could be a whole suite of resources. There's an infinite number of health topics. We constantly get requests for new health topics. People want ADHD, diabetes, cancer. There's just so many that we're forever expanding. And so, yeah, after that, it sort of took off and became a whole company, and not just books, but other resources like school curriculum, posters for doctors' offices. We create a suite of videos, a whole empowerment series away from health. So there's just so many facets that we saw this expanding into, but yeah.
When thinking of the constructs of a piece of writing, an essay, a book, I feel like there's a common misconception that most people can't write enough. When I actually think from my experience, it's actually writing too much. It's, not getting to the point soon enough, not being concise enough. So you've kind of got that point. Meanwhile, you're also got to put in verifiable, fact-checked information from real doctors on these huge topics, and then break it down even further to explain it to kids. How do you actually go about writing these books, getting all this information in, and focusing and prioritizing the most important bits of information without overcomplicating or oversimplifying things to young kids and young impressionable brains?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's something I think of every time I'm writing, because a fun fact about me is I hate to read, which is funny as an author. I hate to read. Yeah, keep that as a secret. But I lose my attention span very quickly. And so I definitely didn't want that to happen to kids reading our books, especially when things related to health topics are not the most exciting conventionally. Would you pick up a book on food allergies or shark versus train, right?
Yeah.
As a kid, okay, shark versus train. But we've created a way to make it super interesting, and exciting and engaging. None of the topics we teach are conventional. For example, you take a heavy topic like anxiety. This is our book on, worry and anxiety. And it is our most popular book. It is so exciting. The way that we teach it actually is differentiating worry from anxiety. Is we have a worry alarm, right? And when your alarm starts ringing, you're able to turn it off, hit the snooze button, and that's worry. But the differentiator for anxiety is your alarm starts ringing and there's no snooze button. You can't turn it off. That's the difference. How we explain it to kids. And so I think just really unconventional things like that make them very exciting for kids. And we've received great feedback, right? That's another thing. Iterating getting feedback, and then iterating again, right? What do kids like? What resonated? What was boring? What's funny? When I'm reading it to a classroom, when do they start laughing? When did a joke not hit? And then you iterate and you do that for the next book. And what we've seen is kids love these books. Kids learn in an exciting way, very fun, that they're not taught in schools, and it's refreshing for them.
Yeah, I feel like there's a point in which you can be good at writing essays and be good in a sort of English class. What have you found is the difference between essay writing and the work that you do at Duke versus the work and effort that you put into these books in terms of your writing? Is it similar or different?
Yeah, I think it's similar in ways, but definitely different. I mean, to anyone watching, it's like if you've taken, if you read Shakespeare and deeply analyzed it, right? Or the Odyssey, which most people have done. I know I did in high school, versus, being in a creative fiction class, right? The teachers are different, of course. Like the teachers that you're learning from, the short fiction class is probably much more fun than reading Shakespeare, but both classes are equally as important in writing that book and taking that step, whether it's a children's book or or a novel, like a long novel that you've always dreamt of writing and you want to take that next step. And um, even writing a children's book, you need to deeply analyze everything, right? It's like there's less pages, there's less to say. You need to be incredibly concise. You need to think like a kid again, right? Have these random dumb ideas. Like the weirder the better for kids. Like the first thing you come up with, like, okay, I was like a worry blob and a pigeon riding off into the sky, right? Like, okay, I think that's great. Kids will start laughing. So I think being creative is something that maybe we don't get as much in schools, which I think we should, especially in those heavy essay writing classes. But those lessons of deeply analyzing every word, these like closed studies that we've done in school, I definitely used and I continue to use when I'm writing books. Is every word is important.
Yeah, and actually going back to the point with regard to your ability to be concise and explain ideas in another way, even as an adult, and I'm sure people, double, triple my age, sorry to my listeners that that's a pretty bad way to put it, but people that are a lot older than us, I feel like that those
Right.
ways of explaining worry versus anxiety is a really good way to put it because it enables you to think about it another way. Because things like anxiety, things like ADHD, things like allergies aren't just things that you deal with as a kid, but stuff that you deal with your whole life. I want to transition back to the idea you made a point earlier saying that traditional children's books can be boring, whereas you've been able to make stuff that's exciting, appeals to kids in a new way, is concise, and is selling really well. How did you go about thinking this is what's not working? This is what's boring, not exciting to kids. They're not reading it. They're not taking it in. It feels like more like a chore to making it something that they want to read, something that makes it exciting, makes it something that someone like yourself who doesn't like reading wants to read and wants to engage with. How do you make that transition? And was there any collection of children's books or authors that you looked up to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think even if you read The Class That Canned Food Allergies, our very first book in the series to one of our newer books, The Class That Canned Nutrition, you'll see a major difference in viewer like engagement, but then also like just simply was it a fun read. I think the first draft I ever wrote, I still have it, was for the food allergy book, and it is just terrible. It is so boring. I was just listing facts. I was like, oh, I was like, two kids in every classroom have food allergy. No one cares. No one,
Wow.
literally no one cares, especially kids. And so I think after writing that, I showed it to my little cousin who was about 6 or 7 at the time, and he just wasn't listening at all. And it reminded me of myself, not listening in a classroom or trying to read a book and reading the whole page and then totally, I have no idea what I just read, right? And having to go back and read it 3 more times. And so I never want to give that experience to anyone else. And so I think really just talking to kids, like kids are so smart and we don't utilize like their brains as much as we should. I remember watching experiments, kids versus adults, right? And like they showed like a blob of literally nothing, like a circle, name, and then just you have 1 minute, name as many things as you can that this could be, right? And kids can name like 60 things, and adults are like, uh, they're thinking very analytically and they lost their
Yeah.
creativity, right? And that's partially maybe due to schooling, it's whatever, other factors. But kids should be the ones being inputting what they're producing, right? What they're going to be reading. And so that's the biggest thing is whatever your entrepreneurial venture is, you need to talk to the customers and you need to take that feedback and that harsh critical feedback because kids are honest. Kids are very brutally honest, especially. But that's the most important thing. One of the most important things in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, with the world of short form content, I think there's a misconception that Gen Z have shorter attention spans, even though everyone is using TikTok and Instagram Reels, but Gen Z are apparently the
Yeah.
ones with the shorter attention spans. But actually, having learned more and read more and listened to more verifiable podcasts and fact check podcasts on this sort of matter, it actually seems that people are just getting better to determine what they like quicker. So it's often in the first 3 seconds of a TikTok or a YouTube video or a podcast or reading a book that people are like, oh, I like this or I don't. I mean, that's why first impressions are so useful. And it's that exercise that you did with those kids and realizing what actually appeals to them and what doesn't. It's not that the kids aren't listening or that they're not attentive or that they don't want to learn. It's just that what they're putting out isn't useful.
Yeah.
Like I have a professor at Duke, he's called Dr. Aaron Dinnan. He's got, 500,000 followers on TikTok. And I had him for 2 semesters. And kids in his class can go on their laptop, go on their phone. And he says, it's my fault as the professor if kids are on their phone, because it means that I'm not giving information in a way that's understandable and that they can interpret and they can learn from. And I think that's a really interesting way to go about things.
Yeah, 100%. I also have had Aaron in, and I remember him saying the exact same thing, right? And part of it is true. Our generation does probably have shorter attention spans due to like this instant gratification that we grew up with. And I want something, let me order it off of Amazon right now, or I'm hungry, let me Uber Eats or DoorDash, right? We have this instant gratification, and if we're not instantly gratified by what we're consuming, by the book that we're reading, by the show that we're watching, I just turn it off, right? Think about if you're watching a TV show for the first time. I watch the first 10 minutes. If I don't really enjoy it, I'm not probably going to continue it. It's all about the hook too, right? Like anything in entrepreneurship, whether it's the packaging, it's all about the hook. You think about it as social media, right? You're watching a TikTok. You have about you have a second or two to
Yeah.
catch the viewer's attention, or you're done. You're done, right? And so it's that first page, it's that first hook, it's the cover, it's what's interesting about this, or I want to learn more. And I think that is, yeah, another big thing.
And what have you learned about how to create a good hook?
Yeah, I think a good hook has to be has to leave you wondering for sure. So for example, you know, on on our asthma book, this cover doesn't really make sense, right? Like, what does this have to do with asthma?
Yeah.
Um, right. And so I think that leaves people probably wondering, and parents also wondering, because at the end of the day, who's buying the book? Who is your consumer, right? Like the consumer is different than who is buying it a lot of times in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And the 8-year-olds are not buying our books. They don't have money, right? It's probably the moms or the grandmas, probably buying for their grandkids or their children, right? And so you need to appeal to that customer, find where that customer is. What kind of hooks do they like? What's going to leave them wondering? What's going to want their kid to consume this? Because that's the most important thing to a parent is, how their kid is developing and what books they're reading, what shows they're watching, what's not allowed. And so these things really appeal to moms, especially on the outside, perhaps, and then on the cover. But then when it gets into it, we have to appeal to the kid because that's who's going to want to buy more, or that's who's going to continue reading or say, no, I don't want to read this. Give me back Shark versus Train, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting how you're appealing to two different people in both of the parents with the front page and the kids in the middle. And it's also interesting how in a book that's like fact checked and is actually backed up by researchers and people that are at the top of their field, it has an element of confusion. You'd almost think as if it would be the other way, like, just state this is what we're going to tell you, but actually through the confusion is what, reels people in.
totally, totally. 100%. And then having those forwards by credible people, right? Credibility is massive in anything that you're doing, right? So like on our nutrition book, this is our nutrition book. It says forward by Joy Bauer, NBC Today Show's nutrition and health expert, right? So if I'm a parent, I'm like, oh wow, I want my kids to be learning from them because who is Riya Jain and who is JJ Lopez? I really don't know. And then I read the back and I'm like, oh my God, she is in high school. I do not want my kid to be reading this, right? So you have to have that credibility, especially when you're starting out as a young entrepreneur.
So you're at the point where you've sold, I mean, as I mentioned at the start, over 30,000 copies. You've formed great relationships with both institutions, parents, kids, people actually, customers, consumers actually getting the book. You're also at Duke. You're getting internships. You've got, you're great at public speaking. You've raised, you won a prize for over $30,000 at Duke. You've got all these amazing things going for you. How does the land of Can fit in to your career? Is it something you want to do on the side? Is it something that you want to do full time? You're looking at a portfolio career. Like, how does this all come together into what you're doing now and into the future?
Totally. That's a great question. I am spending as much time as I possibly can on the land of Can. People always ask me, how did you manage being sort of a CEO, all of high school and then now in college and balance your academics with that, and extracurriculars, anything else you're doing. But I think as anyone watching this probably knows, if you're passionate about something, you make time for it and it's not work. As I'm sure maybe doing these podcasts for you are, right? You
Yeah.
enjoy learning and that's what it is. And so for me, this is one of my passion projects. And so it's not work. It is, fun and interesting and exciting. And I am just so passionate about it. It's hard to stop. You want to work all night on it and email more people and get it out there. And so, I just sort of went on a tangent there. Well, wait, sorry. What was the question?
My question was like, how does this fit into your career goals and
Oh
like what
yeah,
you're
what do I
doing?
see it? Okay, yeah. So I think especially after winning the Duke Startup Showcase, and getting that, $30,000 prize, and now not even just the money, but I think that kickstarted all these connections, right? Like that just the momentum is through the roof. Every Duke alumni in the entrepreneurship world, I now have free access to email them and tell them about the showcase, or they're emailing me and saying, I watched it on YouTube. Let's chat. I'm like 100%, right? I'm just spending all my days in Zoom calls and it's fantastic, learning from people. But I totally see this as something I would love to be full time on this. I mean, that's the dream for any entrepreneur is get to work on your venture full time. But obviously, we'll see where it goes. I see this being a household name, uh, spreading all across America and beyond. So that's my vision for it, and we'll see what happens. I hope that's the case, and I'm going to work all summer to make that the case. But entrepreneurship takes time, and it's not easy. There's so many setbacks and failures, and you want to give up, and things aren't working. Money's not coming, and you still have to persevere. But also sometimes know when to take a step back, and maybe this isn't the one. But for this, the land of Can, I see this as something I would like to continue and hopefully be full time on.
What do you think's maybe there isn't anything, but what do you think is missing or that you need to add on to it to, catalyze that growth? And if you could wave a magic wand, what is one thing that you would change about it to get towards that goal?
Yeah, I think the one thing we're working on is scaling right now. I think we have a dozen books, we have all the resources. It's now just getting it into more people's hands. The one thing I'm working on a ton right now is B2B selling, so business to business. And so that involves me creating a pitch deck, a sell sheet, and writing a ton of hospitals, schools, public, private, allergist offices, pediatrician offices, whatever it is, health clinics, and asking, asking for these orders, these subscription models in bulk, as well as direct to consumer we're working on. And that is through expanding our social media presence. That's through expanding our Amazon storefront, which we haven't explored fully yet. And so there's so many facets that I'm looking to expand on, where I don't think I've met with a ton of seasoned entrepreneurs, some of which include, John Antonelli. He founded Real Sports, another Duke alum, Melissa Bernstein with Melissa and Doug, and Sun Yan Xiang, CEO coach, director of Coach K Center. These seasoned people, tell you the truth. And for me, it's not going to be expanding yet and, going across all social media platforms and writing more books. That's so compelling and that's more exciting. But is that going to see results? Probably not. It's really just going to be this distribution process. And, that's something maybe that's not as fun, but that's what you have to do to get your product out there.
From that distribution standpoint, what is it that they're looking for? Like, I feel like something I've often been taught is it's all about credibility. Go to the right
Yeah.
elementary school, middle school, high school, college,
Yeah.
work at the right job, and then you can do something. But you're doing it from a younger standpoint. You're obviously still at great schools and have had a great path to where you are now, but you are younger. Do you think that serves as more of an advantage or a disadvantage? And how do you go about introducing yourself and selling yourselves to these businesses?
Yeah, I think being young is the best thing for entrepreneurship. College, especially, is the best time to be an entrepreneur because once you get older and once you're in the workforce, you're going to be working probably a 9 to 5, maybe longer, depending on the job. And your passion project, your entrepreneurship is going to be taking up your sleep then, right? And all the extra time that you have. You have this wonderful opportunity in college and high school and being at home to start something that you're passionate about with more time than you will ever have in your life. Even if it seems like you have all these homework and studies to do, like now is the time. Especially so because people can't say no to young people. It's so hard to, especially when you're persistent. You're a persistent young person. Like if you're a, 30 something year old with an invention, like tough luck. I don't really care to meet with you. Right. But if you approach it as I want to learn from you, what you do, it's not a lie. I want to learn from you. I want to take your expertise, especially if, you have a connection to them, oh, you went to Duke or, oh, you went to my high school and you're doing this now, right? Like it's taking advantage of, the place that you're at. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when you're older, you know more people and you have more connections, whatever it is. But I think at this stage of my life, it's been an advantage for me. And as a kid, 18 now, but somewhat of a kid, to be writing kids books for kids is more compelling for younger kids, as you're more relatable.
The idea of being younger and more people being more willing to help you, I think, is definitely true, and is a common thread I've learned from young entrepreneurs on this podcast. And I think it comes down to like a few reasons. One of which being that they see a younger version of themselves in you. But I actually also think it can be for selfish reasons. Like obviously there's the goodwill part, but these seasoned entrepreneurs, like they're not just going to do stuff out of the goodness of their heart the whole time. I think it's also an opportunity for them to learn what is this new generation interested in? What are they talking about? How are they thinking of ideas? You gave that example of a kid, in a circle and coming up with 60 ideas, and an adult can only come up with 5. Once they've got the connections and the resources and the time, they don't necessarily have the same ability to come up with ideas. And that's where speaking to a young person can fill that gap. And on top of that, it's almost like an exciting journey watching you as a founder and as an author build up this business, because it's the perfect example and person to follow for those kids to show them that they can do it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree with you more, right? It's just take advantage of the opportunities that you're given. You're whatever stage you're at, it's going to come with its benefits and maybe the opposites, right? Like what don't you have? Maybe credibility is one of them. But at this stage, you can't change it, right? Wherever you are. If you're in your 30s and you have an idea, great. And not great, right? It doesn't matter, but you can't change it. And so just ride the wave and figure out what advantages come with where you're at, and utilize it. So, yeah.
Could you talk to me a bit about what it's like to be a young CEO, especially with how you actually go about getting stuff done and managing a team? Because I feel like you're a very kind and lovely person, and having tried to manage teams even within a club setting at Duke, it can be quite hard to get stuff done sometimes, whilst also trying to be nice and a people person and liked by everyone.
Totally. I think that's something I'm still trying to figure out and is constantly trying to learn is, yeah, managing teams is not easy, right? And you don't want to come across as, rude or unforgiving. But sometimes you have to put your foot down. And I think also as a woman too, as like a young woman, that's something that can be hard. As we don't want to be seen as selfish or bossy, whereas perhaps maybe a man in this sort of position would be seen as a leader by doing something like that. And so I think it really is all about leadership for me. And the definition that we actually teach kids in the land of Can is being able to see other people's strengths. And so leadership is again, yeah, seeing other people's strengths. So those in my team, what is this person good at? What is this person good at? That is leadership. And even if you're doing that in your friend group, if you're trying to plan a trip and you're seeing people's strengths, so this person is not very reliable. Let's have them plan XYZ, right? Or oh, they can plan yeah, whatever it is, or they can drive us, right? Like that's leadership too, and just a smaller scale. And that's what we teach in the land of Can. And I think the earlier you learn that, the better off you'll be. And it's not something, I'm not sure it's something that is, that you're born with. I think it's something that you're maybe accustomed to and that you're taught. But it's all iterating and being open to feedback, right? Like if someone has a problem with me on my team, or if I didn't say something quite right, I want to know, and they know that they can be open with me, about that.
I feel like it's a similar thing with going to the gym. Motivation only gets you so far. It's discipline that keeps you there. And I think it's similar when you have a project that's doing good for the world. There's only so far that doing good and giving up your time and helping the world gets people. There's got to be these underlying incentives. How do you go about finding and giving roles to people that both matches their strengths, but also aligns with what they're interested in and what keeps them ticking?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because sometimes the things that we're good at, we're not actually interested in. And so I think it's a balance, right? And being open and communicating. Communication is key, right? So constantly talking one-on-ones with the people on my team, with my co-founder, with our managing director, with our illustrator, with our medical board, whoever it is, having these open dialogues of what do you see yourself working on? Where do you think you could be? What do you want to be working on? And where do you think you could be the most useful? Where do you think you could help us grow? And I think most people know themselves and they know their answers. They know what they want to be doing. And most CEOs or bosses or whatever it is, I feel like don't ask those questions, right? It's what do I see you doing? But no one knows themselves more than themselves. And you're going to get the most motivation out of what you want to do, right? And so if I tell you to, revise this draft for me, and you don't want to do it, it's going to be, half done. It's not even very, very good. And I don't want that as someone trying to publish a book, right? So, but if they want to be working on distribution and writing more hospitals, I'm sure that's going to be fantastic. And that's what I'm going to allow them to work on. So I think it's just all communication.
How would you describe your leadership style? Is there a specific word that'd be able to sum it up?
Oh, a specific word. Huh. That's
Or
a good
category?
question. Yeah. Probably empathy, I would say. I think a great leader has to have a ton of empathy. Not just being able to, not just feeling bad or maybe feeling good, whatever it is. You have to be able to understand and feel what that person is going through, especially, if one of the biggest issues that people face in businesses is people aren't working as hard in certain times, or this project fell through, and then you have to have these difficult conversations, right? But I think being someone who's been in that position, everyone's been in that position where you've had a project fall through, you told someone you would do something, and you didn't do it very well, or you had ChatGPT do it and you got caught, whatever it is. You need to be understanding of that, and everyone has their things going on outside of whatever. Maybe it's 100% for you, but maybe it's 20% of their life for someone else. And that can vary. Maybe they have, something hard that happened in their family, and you need to be able to understand that. And you might never know, right? So I think it's just having empathy and holding understanding for what everyone is going through, allows you to be the best leader that you can be and have people feel open talking to you. Yeah.
So very obviously you've done extremely well with how the book has brought you to the position you're in today, like the cumulative outcome of all those decisions you made. And, some people might call it the butterfly effect of one thing leading to another. There's a often asked question, but I want to ask it to you. Like, is there anything that you would tell your younger self at the start of this journey, or anything that you would have done differently were you to do it again?
That's a great question. I've actually never been asked that. So that's a tough one. I think that if I told my younger self where this company would be at today, I think she would be just shocked that this little idea This dumb idea she had to create a book on food allergies is now a company that is scaling and is going to be massive. She'd be just floored. And so I honestly wouldn't change. I think like when you look back upon your venture, it's hard to say what you would change. I think the biggest thing though would be to not let those failures or setbacks overtake you. One of the biggest failures or setbacks that we had actually was I was very set on getting on the Today Show, and I'm still very set on getting the Today Show someday. But I had done over like 10 rounds of interviews, and I was on the final round, and they were literally telling me they were going to ship me out to, NYC, and I would get Joy Bauer, we would be talking with the Today Show hosts, and I'd be sitting in that white chair, and oh my gosh, that would just take our company off. And I thought 100% it was going to happen. And right after the final interview, they said, we want to see some more growth with your company. We want to see it more popular before we get you on the Today Show. And that was crushing. That was absolutely crushing. And I stopped working on the Land of Can for a little bit after that. I took a big break. And I was like, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. And I don't know how to scale it from here, honestly, after not getting on a show like that. And so I would tell myself to not have done that. Hindsight is 2020, obviously. I did what I knew, but don't let those setbacks and failures get to you and destroy your vision for the company. Because if you believe in something wholeheartedly, it will come to fruition. And I 100% believe that. And then there's the other, if you keep working on it, right? I kept working on it, and I got to college. I applied for the startup showcase at literally midnight the night before, just as a little joke, and end up winning the whole thing as a freshman, right? It's sort of shocking. I remember being like, if this doesn't work, I'm throwing my hands up. But now it is just the biggest it's ever been. And so you never know where those opportunities are going to come, and you have to try for them all.
Something from a previous guest I had on, he's called Justin Rose. He's a big golfer. He's won the US Open. He came second in the Masters this year. He almost won it.
Yeah.
And it's a story I've brought up before in terms of like, when you're, with golf, if you've hit too many shots or you're playing badly or doing badly in life, there's often that way of thinking to realize, stay grounded, stay in the moment, forget about it, take it as a point of knowledge, move forward. But what he also interestingly said, that even the positive things, when he's hit the best shot, he's hit less shots, you hit a hole in one or a birdie, or, you do something really well in life, was obviously take that moment and enjoy it, but don't get overconfident and don't use that as a situation to say, I'm going to stop working, I'm going to stop growing. How do you keep yourself grounded that when things like the Today Show don't work out, or even now with the startup showcase where you've got $30,000 for your company, how do you keep yourself grounded instead of having this sort of flow of emotions to be this and to steadily grow and keep expanding the company?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's not easy. It's human instinct and human emotion that you almost need to shut off at a certain level. You need to know yourself and your company that enough that the setbacks don't define you, right? I mean, I honestly have used the Land of Can message in every aspect of my life, where it is the whole point is not letting your setbacks or things you can't control, your whether it's your health condition or whatever it is, don't let that define you, right? So that Today Show failure, I lived in the land of not. I did not live in the land of can. I totally let that define me. And the startup showcase, the same goes, right? That doesn't define your company now. You still need to keep grinding and working. And I think a good entrepreneur will do that probably naturally. Yeah.
Is there anything that you feel like you've had to unlearn having gone through this journey?
I think had to unlearn. Um, wow, that's interesting. I That's an interesting question, Harvey.
Yeah, so like for me, like there's often these like conceptions that you get of being an entrepreneur or being a student or going to a place like Duke. Like I need to be
Yeah.
super hardworking. I need to be full force the whole time. I need to be busy 24/7. I need to be working my
Yeah.
ass off. But actually, something that I've had to unlearn is to realize that I don't have to work hard the whole time, and that taking a break is just as important as working hard. Because otherwise, you get burnt out. And I got burnt out before I went to Duke. My mum was unfortunately unwell, but it meant I had to take a year off. And that enabled me to do internships, which has enabled me to be in the position I am today, be more mature, get more
Yeah.
shape, reframe my mind. Because obviously, I think there's some things that we think are doing really good. Like you have this idea of how you're going to build up this business and what it could be. But then over time, there's different things that you experience that change the way you perceive yourself, the business, the people around you. So yeah, it's a tricky question. I've never been asked that before either.
Yeah.
But I
No,
don't
but
know
I
if
think
that
I
helps
think
with.
yeah, no, that's helpful. I think probably a big thing is letting go of some ego to a certain point. I think when you've had success, especially at a young age, something you have to unlearn is um putting yourself at some sort of pedestal or that you're better than anyone, because the truth is, as an entrepreneur, you are on the floor, right? Like you are at square zero and you need to see everyone else as 10 times above you. Whether even when I'm talking to a third grader, they are, I'm serving them, right? Like I'm on the ground, they're all the way up here. This third grader has all the insights that I need. I'm probably not even giving anything to them in this conversation. So when I talk to a third grader, it is probably the same, my mindset as going and meeting with a top CEO or entrepreneur and getting their advice and insights. I think respect is massive, right? Especially kids, they feel so unrespected. They want to be adults. They want to be treated like adults. So let's treat them like adults. And I'm genuinely asking for feedback on something. And when has if I was a kid and I got asked for feedback by an adult, I would be like, "Wow, I'm awesome. I'm so important." I would feel great. So it's all about making that other person feel great and respected, no matter what conversation you go into and what biases you carry talking to a person. I think that's another thing I had to unlearn is when you're pulling a bio. And I learned this from one of my mentors, Sun Yan Xiang, at Duke. And when you're pulling a bio or when you're learning about someone before a meeting, the biggest things to look at are not, what their accomplishments were, what they, maybe what piece of legislation they passed. You're talking to a congressperson. I don't care. It's maybe their early life category on that Wikipedia page. It's what was their early life like? Where did they grow up? Were they what school did they go to? What were their challenges or setbacks? Find those things, and that's how you're able to connect with someone. It's not what their politics are, and I don't want to. I've had to unlearn going in with those biases. I don't want to start with those biases, right? It's like everyone has something to teach you, and that's been my biggest lesson is that go into every conversation with the mindset that everyone has something to teach you. Even when you're meeting random people, making friends, if there's a jerk, they probably have something to teach you. Everyone is going through life for the first time. And so I think that's one of the biggest things.
Something I wanted to ask you, and with regard to the land of can't can, but it can be, about anything,
Yeah.
is if you could put a message on a billboard on everyone's phones for a minute or so, and it would reach everyone on the entire planet, what would that message be?
Wow. That's a lot. I have so much I'd want to say. I think it's probably just so simple, but and it probably is on billboards, but I think my guiding principle has just been, um, like just to be kind. I don't know. I mean, like everyone is like that silly quote of like everyone is fighting a battle and like everyone has this baggage and you have no idea what it is, but everyone goes around and continues through their day with a smile. And I would just want people to know that like it's like what I talked about before is respecting everyone in every conversation. Um, Even if they're much older than you, I've learned that, it's everyone's first time living, right? Like
Yeah.
if I'm talking to an 80-year-old, this is their first conversation with me. It's not like I'm expecting them to lead the conversation or just because they're older, they have more experience, right? Like it's every experience is brand new for everyone. And everyone has the same social anxiety or whatever it is. And I think just being that kind person, that kind force, even if you're feeling it, is the best way to make it better for everyone else. And especially with the land of can. I mean, gosh, I just speak to so many kids who have been bullied constantly from their health condition, who have just such low self-confidence. And hearing their stories is heartbreaking, quite frankly. Hearing how the land of can change them is the opposite, is like the most incredible feeling in the world, right? Like even if my company just helps one kid, I will have succeeded. And so I feel that I'm already a success just because I've heard stories from a singular child. Um, and so this long-winded answer, but I think it's just be kind because, gosh, even the little things can stick with people for the longest amount of time, especially, these kids who are, that's the most vulnerable point of your life. And that's when your brain is developing. And I'm sure everyone watching this, like, has some instance they can think of them as a kid and something someone said to them that they'll never forget. Maybe in a good way and then also in a bad way. And so be that person who has that. You want to be that person who leaves that impression on someone, that good thing someone said about you that you'll never forget.
I saw an analogy the other day. It was something along the, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. It was something along the lines of the hungry person, the person who hasn't eaten, wishes that they had food. The person with the sandwich wishes they had a bike to go to work. The person with the bike wishes they had a car to drive to work. The
Yeah.
person with the car wishes they had a nicer car. The person with the car wishes they didn't have to go to work. The person that owns the business wishes that they could go through the whole journey all over again. And that it's that, like, comparison is the theft of joy. But
Yeah.
on that point, when you do have an allergy, or you have, there's a point at which there are just mental constructs that we build up around us of a lot of things that are or aren't real, but things like allergies or disabilities, or, mental disabilities, or, anything else that are not more real, but are more physical in a sense, are things that are quite hard to escape and can be more obvious to other people. Aside from reading your books, because that can reframe their mind in a singular moment, having dealt with allergies and stuff in your own life, what has been your permanent or even recurring solution that when anxiety over your allergies or anything else comes up, how you react to it in a way that enables you to continually be confident and be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I think it's all about the early interactions and constant interactions that you face. Whether it's even something as simple as the reaction of a waiter when you tell me you have a food allergy, right? Or is it something where, I've gone to a restaurant recently and I told them about my food allergy and they start, make poking jokes at you or making fun of you, or, oh, just so you know, I put extra nuts in your meal just for you. Like these little things, it's not funny. And we have to stop normalizing, not just with allergies, but with most health conditions, all health conditions. Or is it a waiter who says, "Oh my gosh, I also have a food allergy. Like, I'll make sure you're in good hands," or, um, "Thank you so much for telling me that. Like, I will ensure that you'll be safe." Something so simple as that, I think, is so empowering. And I think that it's those little gestures, and that's something that we can actively do every day is be curious, but don't be ignorant, right? If you don't understand something, someone that a friend or a peer or whoever it is going through, like asking in like a kind, genuine way is probably like the biggest breath of fresh air for those people. And you'll end up leaving the conversation with a newfound understanding of something you didn't before. And isn't that what we're all constantly trying to do is learn? But then the other person on the receiving end, the person with maybe the health condition, uh, feels understood. And that's all anyone wants in life is to be heard, seen, and understood. And if that's something that you can give to someone, then it'll make your day as well.
There's the thing with social media in which it's supposed to make us more connected to the people around us, but I actually think it can make people more detached because it takes the person from who you are in person, real
Yeah.
face-to-face connection, to behind a screen, and then even to the point of anonymity, which promotes
Yeah.
bullying. It promotes thoughts that haven't been properly thought out. Like the average
Yeah.
person has between 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So they just
Wow.
kind of spew things out. So,
Yeah.
like, at what point can people both be themselves, I think it's good to have a world where people can not in that setting, but people can make jokes and people can be themselves and people can be relaxed with each other, but also to a point where they're understanding of those around you. How do you strike that balance between just being yourself or like being relaxed in a manner without overstepping the line? Because I feel like in a lot of these circumstances, these people are unaware of mental disabilities or allergies or stuff like that. So how do you
Things you
strike that
can't see.
balance of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How do you strike that balance of being yourself, but also not overstepping and not upsetting the people around you?
Yeah. I think Maya Angelou always, I'm forgetting the exact quote, but it's um like we only know as much as we know until we know better. And when you know better, do better. Right. And so if you don't know of someone's, whatever they're going through, right, like they can't exactly hold that against you. And so, but it's again being curious and holding empathy. I think it's a combination of the two. You can be yourself, but you can also have empathy. And if like it's just a combination. And having empathy for someone, stepping in their shoes for a second, how would this question come across? How would this be perceived, right? Like, are you going up to someone who's maybe in a wheelchair and being like, oh, what happened to you? Or what's
Yeah.
wrong? Like, framing it as a negative, just anyone can put themselves into the shoes of, someone struggling, because everyone has struggled at times. And how you would want something framed, lead with that, and it almost will never yield to disappointing results. And if it does, then own up to it, own up to your mistake. Like if you say something wrong, just apologize. Swallow your ego for 2 seconds and apologize. I didn't know, and I'm trying to learn. I'm just curious, right? Like curiosity will never fail.
Yeah, I think there's a point at which it's good for people to have good intentions. And I'm not a fan of cancel culture by any means,
Yeah,
but I do think there is a point in which people can improve in a sense, as you said,
yeah,
the ability to apologize, to move past something. I actually had an
totally.
interesting, I didn't find it offensive in any way, but I'm, blonde, I'm extremely good looking. I'm kidding. I look how I look, but my younger brother looks very similar to me. So he's slightly smaller than me, but he used to have longer hair, but he's now buzzed off his hair. So he looks extremely similar to me. And he came to visit me at Duke like, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and
Yeah,
literally nonstop. My best friend, this another best friend, girlfriend, her friends, teachers, professors, literally every person we bump into the street would say, "Are you guys twins?" And it almost got to the point where like police officers or people in stores would be like, "Are you twins?"
yeah,
And we thought it was funny. We were like, "Oh, we've never really had that. We
gotten
look
that.
similar. We've never
Yeah,
had that before." And it made me think about someone in a wheelchair or a really tall person that's asked, "Do you play basketball?" I mean, I do that the whole time. You see someone really tall, you're like, "Do you play basketball?" And it's almost like these knee-jerk reactions at which it's like, it's fine to have good intentions and to be not aware about something, but it comes a point where it's like, for those people on those ends, if you were to
yeah,
flip the script, and for me, it's getting asked, "Are you a twin?" 50 times a day. It's like, all right,
yeah,
it's a bit annoying at this point, but it's
yeah,
different people. With the basketball player, with the tall person, it's, are you being a basketball player, or the allergy person, is everything all right with you? It's,
yeah,
people need to be conscious about these things because
yeah,
although it might not have a direct impact on them, if they can put good into the world and change how they are in terms of how they
yeah.
react to people that are going through conditions or often things that are internal, it actually makes all the difference.
Yeah, 100%. I think just the bottom line from exactly what you were saying, that's almost a social experiment, right? That you sort of went through is probably the daily life of maybe someone in a wheelchair or someone with some sort of disability that is actually visible to the human eye is these constant looks, right? Like people looking at you funny or even then asking, right? Are you a twin or are you disabled or what happened to you? It's just probably exhausting. So I think the truth is just treating everyone like a human, right? Like everyone is the same at the end of the day, regardless of whatever disability they're in, what situation they're in. If my biggest thing is if you were someone like I don't want to put simulations out there, but I truly believe we're almost living in a simulation, right? It's like if you were someone and you lived in their exact situation, you are them in their position, you'd be doing exactly what they're doing right now. And so that leads back to empathy. And would you want to be asked that question? The first thing you hear about them is something related to their appearance? Probably not. Even if it's something as simple as, are you a twin? That's not even offensive. It's just exhausting. And so I think approaching these things with kindness and just all pure intentions. It doesn't even have to be a question. You can just want to be someone's friend and learn from them. Maybe a question, something they've never probably been asked before. Like, what do you think about XYZ? What do you think about this topic? Or do you want to go hang out or play basketball rather than do you play basketball? Like, it's something where you're both benefiting from, and maybe you'll make that person's day by approaching them with something so nuanced. And that could even be an exercise for daily, like every day, try to ask someone a question they've never been asked before, or have an interaction that maybe in a good way, right? Like,
Yeah.
something maybe not bad, but just giving these people, like, everyone is a human, everyone's their first time, right? So it's like, do what you would want to do on, other people.
And I think that's the key to connecting with all these amazing people that you have. It's just realizing that you're both humans, you're both flesh and
Yeah.
blood, and it's finding the commonality between you. I want to ask you one last main question, and then I got three
Yeah.
closing questions. And
Okay.
that being, linking back to the same professor, Dr. Aaron Dinnan, I'm kind of
Yeah.
giving him a lot of glaze this podcast. He talks about that storytelling is the key to, intelligence, and it's something that's always going to be around, in the past and in the
Yeah.
future. Like before it was like we'd be like wives' tales, and then it would be written
Yeah.
mediums, and now we've got,
Totally.
radio and TV and TikTok, etc., and whatever will be in the future. But that same thing will be around in a different form in 1,000 years. You're
Yeah.
obviously telling stories through your books, and it's working well. From an economic standpoint, it's literally selling books. What have you found are the keys to telling a good story? And more specifically for those listening, how can they go about interpreting information in any form of setting, whether throughout their day or coming up with an idea and their own stories of how to develop that into a story that's worth telling, and more importantly, that's worth listening to?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Storytelling is, he's not wrong. It is the key to everything, 100%. You're going to be storytelling your entire life, and the better you can get at it, I'm still trying to learn, the better off you'll be. And I think answering this question, with a story, I was actually in a class with Professor Shep Moyle, who I also believe was on this podcast.
Yeah.
But he did an exercise with us that I constantly try and improve on every day. And he gives us a scenario, and I think it could be, you can use your imagination, right? Like, he said aliens in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Okay, take that and spend 30 seconds, craft a narrative in your head, and then tell someone a story related to aliens in Cameron Indoor Stadium. So you have to craft an entire story. And the best thing you can do is also try not to use or like. Look the person directly in the eye, and the second you break eye contact, you had to put her hands up. If I said or like or broke eye contact, you'd have to put a finger down. Right? So I think I've said or like probably 10,000 times on this podcast and looked away. So we're all constantly trying to learn, but everything gets better with practice. And I think that's also an exercise that people can learn on. But again, like we talked about before, storytelling is all about the hook. It's the things learned in grade school, right? There's a hook, there's a climax, and then there's, like conclusion. And as any good story, and you have to be able to be concise with it as well, which I'm trying to learn because clearly I'm not very concise.
Literally just before you wrote that, I wrote down the word concise. Like that's something I'm trying to learn to do, because I'm someone that likes to ramble and this connects to this,
Yeah.
this connects to this, and coming back to
Yeah.
this. But it was like I can't remember who said this. Some famous author said that, if you can say something in less words, say it in less words. And I found that to be so true, because people they don't need the ramble, they just want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you three final questions quickly. The first of which being is, what's next for you? Whether over the next few months, year, 5 years, 10 years, you can use any time frame that you like.
Yeah. What's next for me is totally expanding and scaling the Land of Can. If people who are watching this want to check it out, our website is thelandofcan.com, and we're also on Amazon. And so I think just scaling, expanding, getting more eyes on things is the biggest thing. We're going to be getting into Duke Health, and then also expanding to more cities. I think one of the most important things for me is our give back. So also expanding our give back and these underserved communities, because those are the communities that need empowerment the most. And so I constantly do a lot of work just, in Chicago's backyard and the Chicago South Side and Englewood, and doing free book readings to these libraries. And these kids just like, they've never experienced things like this before. There's just such a wide world, and it's so rewarding for me, but then also for them, I hope. And that's how I know this is going to be successful. But yeah, scaling, creating more books. We're coming out with ADHD actually and eczema soon. So that's going to be exciting. Creating a newsletter, like really just expanding, doing all the entrepreneurial, early stage entrepreneurial things. But yeah,
I think it's great because I used to have eczema and I have ADHD, and I think it's
I
not
also
only
have both. So yeah,
it's not only that the books are great at teaching you about something, but it also lowers the barrier.
yeah,
ADHD, it's almost gone too far, I think, at this point in time, where
yeah,
it's like, oh, everyone has ADHD. Like, no, they don't. Not everyone has ADHD,
yeah.
but it makes it seem like something that not that you should want to have, but that it's normal to have.
Yes.
I mean, I could talk about that for hours, but my penultimate question, if I was to ask someone in 100, maybe even 150 years' time, what would you want your legacy to be, and how would you want them to describe you?
Wow. That's probably the question we're all trying to achieve every day, right? It's just like how, what is your mark? And I think for me, it's probably maybe it'll be the land of Can, but I really don't want it to be anything about a company or a business rather than my character. I hope someone could just say that they had an interaction with me where they left feeling better than they started. I think like if I could pick anything, I would just want it to be that I made people feel good and these random conversations that we have, where it they left feeling not drained but empowered. I think that's the biggest thing. And as someone who I want to eventually go into politics, and work in that sort of realm of things, and where that can be sometimes be a dirty field, I hope that people could see me as hopefully a beacon of light, maybe somewhat honest if I don't get corrupted too soon. But I think again, it's having those brutally honest conversations with people, and hopefully that people think that I listened to them and I cared about them because I do. So
Yeah, someone will come back and find this interview in 20 years' time and be like, yeah, she was so intelligent from such a young age.
and then what happens?
No, no, no. And my final question is, and I ask this to every guest on Personable, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
To take away from this episode, I think it's that entrepreneurship is hard, but it should not stray you away from it. If you have a passion or have been wanting to write this book that you've constantly been thinking about, or whatever it is, just go for it. Full send it because there's no better time than the present. There's no better time than the position that you're in right now. You're never going to get this moment back with the benefits that you have at maybe the age that you're at or whatever stage you're in life. I think it's 100% that. And then once you start, it's don't give up, which is so generic, but do not let the setbacks get to you. If you believe in something and 100 people tell you this is a terrible idea, that's probably the story of most successful entrepreneurs. And it's those pieces of advice where they tell you it's terrible that you need to take in the most, which is not easy. But if you're dedicated and a true entrepreneur, which anyone has the ability to be, it's not something you're born with, something you learn. You'll get there and you'll find success.
Thank you very much, Ria. I think your journey is absolutely incredible. I knew you as a friend and around Duke before I had actually learned about your book and what you've been doing. And I went on the Duke Startup Showcase and I literally watched your whole thing. I didn't even 2x speed it. I watched your whole thing. And I thought your
Yeah.
ability to not use like and things that I, amongst others, used the whole time was incredible. But not only that, your actual storytelling capability, unedited, live, and ability to capture an audience was beyond remarkable. And from that point, I went down the rabbit hole of like trying to find all your books and see online. And I think it's something amazing that you've built, not only at this age, but up to this point. Where I think the differentiator comes from is not only having the idea, because you'll get the goodwill of, having had allergies and then be able to
Yeah.
overcome that and share that with the world. But actually your
Totally.
ability to market that and create that into a real product is very inspirational. I feel very lucky to know you and to see what you've got up to this point. I just hope that, you use that Justin Rose example of, when that loss happens with the Today Show, but even now when you're at the high, is to keep
Yeah.
finding new highs and to keep growing that, so that all the billions of kids around the world can continue to be, inspired by you in the world of Can.
Oh,
in the land of Can
100%.
and continue to
Wow.
grow. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Harvey. This was incredible.